Hi guys, welcome to the Amoretti Test Kitchen. My name's Vanessa, and today we're going to be working on a pecan espresso shortbread bar, just in time for the holidays. I've already preheated the oven to 350 degrees just so that we can cut some time. And while that is reaching that temperature of 350 exactly, I'm going to actually take these pecans, put them on my baking sheet, and pop them in the oven to get a nice roast. Because who doesn't like roasted nuts, right? We're gonna let those roast for about 5 to 7 minutes. Make sure you check on them from time to time. And if you don't want that dark roasted pecan flavor, you can always take them out earlier or not roast them at all. That's always an option. So while that's roasting, we're gonna get started on our shortbread base. Again, we are going to be using our espresso, our triple strength espresso. It's a great product and it really does embody the flavor of espresso. So instead of having your traditional cookie bread base, we are going to spice it up a little bit. So let's get started. I'm going to start off by adding my butter in here. I did already soften it and mix it up a little bit. You don't have to. You can definitely just throw in 2 softened bars of butter because it does call for 1 cup. So whatever works best for you will totally be fine in this recipe. We're gonna go ahead and get that started. So as you can see, the butter is pretty whipped. Again, I did start with some pretty soft butter. So if your butter is a little bit harder, you may need to mix it a little bit longer, but the point is to get a nice fluffy, creamy butter. We're gonna move into adding our sugars now that we've already achieved that. So we're gonna start off with adding our granulated sugar as well as our brown sugar. And we're gonna let that mix up. Throughout the process, guys, make sure that we're also mixing our, make sure that we are scraping the edges just so that we can get everything evenly combined. We don't want any brown sugar pieces in the long run, any patches of it. That's already mixed in, doesn't take too long. Now we are going to mix in our salt. You could just drop that right in. And one of my personal favorite Amoretti extracts, I know tons of you guys have probably heard me talk about this extract before, and I send it to all of the customers that I work with as well, is our vanilla butter extract. It is seriously, guys, amazing. You can smell it all throughout your house. The aroma once you open the bottle is phenomenal. So if you guys have an opportunity or find a recipe that calls for vanilla extract, switch it out for vanilla butter. I promise you, you will love the results because it's amazing, it's fabulous. So we're gonna actually add that in to our cookie base. There we go. And our second Amoretti product that I had mentioned is the Triple Strength Espresso. This is in our compound line. It's a great product. Again, like I had mentioned, it does embody a beautiful espresso flavor. And it kind of comes across like a very strong flavor. So just be mindful if you don't want a robust coffee flavor. We do have other options, but this one really does embody a rich espresso flavor, which I absolutely love. And keep in mind, you can always switch this compound out for another flavor. So if you love the base, but you're not really big on coffee, you can always switch it out to like a caramel or maybe even just a plain vanilla. We could just stick with that great vanilla butter I was just ranting about. So that's always an option as well. So let's go ahead and let this all combine. And again, guys, as I mentioned, don't forget to scrape the sides. We do want to make sure that everything blends in well together. We don't want any pieces or parts to not have the espresso, so it's really important that this mixes in all very well. All right, so let's turn this back on. Let's get it mixed up. All right, so I'm gonna lower the speed because I need to add in our 2 cups of flour, but I also don't want it to like you know, in my face. So just slow down your speed and just add this in. You don't even really necessarily have to do it slow. I just don't want to wear flour. So I'm gonna try to do it as slow as possible. You can kind of see it still coming out. So just be mindful, guys, that this is gonna be a little bit messy. So we don't want to over mix this. Again, we got to make sure that we get our sides scraped in here so we don't have patches of flour. And this is where it starts getting fun because we're going to take this out in a minute. Perfect. All right. Now you guys look at this color. So the espresso gives our base this beautiful brown color, right, for espresso. And this is actually what it's gonna look like even when it bakes and comes out of the oven. It's still gonna have that beautiful brown color to it. So this is actually ready for the oven, but we do have those those pecans roasting. So we're gonna check on those really quickly. We're gonna let those bake just a little bit longer. I'm gonna work on getting the dough out of my mixer here. All right, guys, so we are gonna take out those pecans. We've already cleared out our mixer, and so we have a little more space. So let me go ahead and grab those. And again, as I mentioned, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. I like roasted pecans, so I chose to put them in the oven, but you don't have to. You could put more, you could put less, so it's really up to you and personal preference. So I'm gonna set these aside because we'll need these again when we work on the top, the base, or the top part of it. But since I had the oven already on and I do need these to cool, I did that first. Next, you're just gonna take a 9 by 13 cookie sheet, line it with parchment paper. And you don't have to do parchment paper if you don't have it. That's totally fine. I like to use parchment paper because it's gonna be nice and easy to remove from the pan once it's cooled, and I'll be able to cut it easier as well. But again, it's up to you. You don't have to if you don't want to. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna transfer from our mixing bowl to our cookie sheet. And now that we have this giant blob of delicious espresso cookie dough, we are just going to flatten it out into our pan. The goal is to try to get it as flat as possible with no edges. So you can have fun here. If you guys want to get your kids involved, I know my kids love being in the kitchen and they love being involved in doing small jobs, especially if it has some sort of feel to it like this. It's like squishy. Some people might want to get like a pastry roller. Other people might just want to do it my way by using your hands. I love being in the kitchen, so the more time I spend in here, the better. But that's just me. So we're just gonna get it to the edges, like I said. Flatten it out the best you can. But remember, we don't want it to have like an edge or like a crust. So we want to get it flat. We're not trying to get it to come up to the edge of the pan all the way to the top. We're just literally flattening it out, getting it all the way to the edges of the pan, but not to the top, if that makes sense. And if it's a little uneven, like you can see my fingers in here, that's okay. Nobody's gonna see it. We're gonna top this off with our pecan pie filling anyways. So it's really, no one's gonna see. But you wanna try to get it as evenly as possible because then you will have some pieces that won't have very much shortbread bottom. So it's important that you do try to get it evenly distributed throughout your pan. Like, again, the reason I'm pushing this side down, guys, is because I don't want it to have a side, like a crust or a lip on it. I just want it to be flat. So as you guys can see, if I take this out, it's just flat. There's no crust, there's no edge really. It just kind of comes to an end. Okay, so now we're gonna pop this in the oven at 350 degrees for about 18 to 23, 24 minutes. The goal is just to make sure that this is cooked. It's not, so just think about like baking a regular cookie, I should say, not cooking a regular cookie. Baking a regular cookie, when it comes out of the oven, it's not gonna be hard. It's not going to really resemble a complete cookie. You have to let them set for a while, so that's what we're gonna do, okay? So again, 350, 18 to 23, 24 minutes, okay? I just pulled it out of the oven, so let's see what it looks like, and it's already cold as well. So this is what it should look like. As I mentioned, the compound provided us a beautiful brown because we did use espresso. So this is what it looks like when it's completed, okay? And again, I did already cool this, so I'm just gonna set this off to the side for now because we're done with that part. So we're gonna start working on the pecan filling. That's gonna go right on top. So first, we're gonna start with half a cup of butter. And we're gonna actually let that brown for a little bit. You're gonna let it cook until you see like the butter turn into brown little speckles at the bottom of it. But you wanna make sure that you stay close by because once it starts, it's gonna go from brown to burnt very quickly. So when you guys see that it's starting to melt down and really start to boil, you're gonna wanna stay really close by, okay? So as you guys can see, the butter is already starting to melt. And I'm just gonna break it up a little bit so that it's not such a big chunk that we're trying to melt down. It'll just help melt it quicker. So we're gonna let that just kind of do its thing. Remember when we had toasted these pecans not too long ago? So what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna chop them down. You can either break them with pieces, or break them with your hands into pieces. So you could just kind of do something like that. Some people prefer just to chop them down. So if you are, comfortable using a knife and chopping these down, you can definitely do that as well. You don't even need to make sure that they're in even pieces or anything like that. So it's really up to you. You can even put them in like a Ziploc bag and just kind of, break them down that way or like bang them against something. So you can be creative in that aspect as to how you break down the pecans, but the whole point is just to get them into smaller pieces. And if you really wanted the whole pecan, you could do that too. So again, personal preference, it's up to you. I really like the smaller pieces, especially when I go to cut the bars, which you guys will see in a little bit. I just think it makes it a little bit easier to cut. But in all reality, you're still gonna be cutting through them. So it's up to you. So our butter is starting to simmer. It's starting to simmer rapidly, but we just wanna let it do its thing for a little bit longer because it's not really to a full boil yet. And I'll make sure to point out the brown specks that I'm talking about once it forms there so you guys can have a visual of exactly what it is we're looking for when we're referring to browning the butter. While this is boiling, I'm just gonna go ahead and start cutting up some of my pecans. You guys can tell it's quite hot over here, but again, it's still not browned the way we want it to, so we still have to leave it on there. I did lower the heat a little bit because it was kind of getting a little explosive there and I didn't want that. And again, I'm just gonna chop some of these down, so do it how you wish. Usually, like when I get my kids in the kitchen and we have to do stuff like this, we put it in Ziploc bags and they just like punch it and like step on it just to really break them down, and they love cooking with me and being in there, so it's just a fun creative way for them to help out. But if I'm by myself, then I usually just bust out the old knife and cut them down like I am here. You may even get away with like putting them in a food processor and just kind of chopping them up quickly. I wouldn't do it too coarse. Do it too much because you don't want them to be like a flour almost, or a meal. Some of you guys may be wondering, like, why are we browning the butter? Why can't we just use melted butter? You definitely can just use melted butter. The reason why I'm browning the butter is because brown butter tends to have a different flavor than just melted butter. So I'm choosing to brown it because I really want to help the nutty taste of the pecans come through, and browning the butter is a great way to do that because again, it does change the flavor profile in the butter. So if you don't want to do that, again, you can just go straight to melted butter. It's not going to affect the recipe because ultimately it's the consistency the consistency is gonna be the same whether it's browned or not. I'm just gonna transfer these back into the bowl for now. They will come back into play in just a few minutes. All right, guys, so now that we've had the opportunity to let our butter brown a little bit, if you guys can see these brown specks on the spoon here, this is what you're looking for. You want, it's almost like the fat breaks down and kind of browns at the bottom. That's what we're looking for. So you're gonna let this boil until you have these brown specks here, like you can see some hanging out on the spoon here, okay? So that's what we're really looking for. That takes a while, so I would do that first, just like I did. Get the butter melted first, browned, and then let it set off to the side while it so it can cool. And while it's cooling, we're gonna start working on the pecan pie filling that's gonna go on top of our espresso shortbread, okay? One thing that you guys may notice is that my bowl still has remnants of the shortbread base. The one thing that I love about this recipe is that you don't have to change out the bowl, you don't have to wash anything out. So it's really like a one bowl kind of recipe, but there are 2 steps, right? Because you have the base and then the filling, but you don't have to wash anything. So with it being the holiday seasons, if you're anything like me, I love cooking, and so I'm always baking. If you could ask my neighbors, I'm always dropping off like different little trays of stuff. So this is great. I don't have to wash a bunch of dishes. I don't have to switch over to a bunch of different equipment. It's just everything in one bowl. It's like perfect for the holidays. So we're gonna get started with my same bowl, same whisk, same everything. I'm gonna go ahead and lock it, and we're gonna start with our eggs. We're gonna pour those in there. Perfect. So we're gonna let these mix until they are a little fluffy, and that the whole color is completely changed, okay? Meaning the yolk is really mixed in well with the egg whites. You don't wanna stop it and see parts of egg white and then kind of like some egg yolk. You want it all to be really blended well together. And then while this is blending, we're gonna go ahead and get going on with I have brown sugar, granulated sugar, and some corn syrup. So we're gonna combine these in with the eggs. You don't have to turn off the mixer unless you want to, but you can just slowly kind of add this in. So there's one. And I'm just gonna go ahead and use this spoon to help me get all of this in here. If you've never worked with corn syrup before, it's very thick. So you may need to use like a rubber spatula or a spoon or something just to kind of help you get it all out, or as much as you can out, because it will stick to the bowl or the cup or whatever you decide to use. So now we're gonna go ahead and add in some of our kosher salt. And I have this vanilla butter again. I told you guys I love it. I'm gonna use it, so I'm using it again in the filling. I'll pour some of this in here. I also have some lemon juice, so we're gonna add our lemon juice, which is very important. And some milk. And to help bind it and thicken it all together, we're gonna add a little bit of flour. So now we're gonna start adding in our butter. It's important to know that if your butter has not cooled all the way, or you don't feel comfortable pouring all of it in there, you're gonna wanna kind of taper it in by adding little by little at a time. We wanna make sure that we're not cooking the eggs that are in our recipe. So again, it's really crucial that the butter has cooled, or you're adding it in small increments so that it can mix into the base without cooking the eggs that we have in here, okay? So as you can see, I'm slowly adding it in. My butter is still a little bit warm, and I don't want those eggs to start cooking inside of my recipe. And guys, we are gonna want those brown specks in there, so make sure that we do get those in there. If you need to scoop them out, you can, or maybe mix your butter beforehand. But we do wanna get that in there. So we're gonna let this whip for a little bit. I'm gonna put it up a little bit higher. So the next step is going to be this, adding our roasted pecans to our filling. You are gonna actually just kind of fold these in. You don't need to mix them. You can if you want to, but just mixing them in, make sure that they're all coated nice and evenly. And there we have it. All right, guys, so there's the fun part. We're just gonna literally pour this right over the top. There's no rhyme or reason as to how you do it. Just get it on top. So we're just gonna use my little rubber spatula here. You're just gonna wanna make sure this gets all the way to all 4 of the edges. Really fill it in good. Make sure it's pretty even. And we are gonna put this back in the oven at 350 degrees for about 30 to 35 minutes. Again, depending on where you live. But yeah, 30 to 35 minutes. When you take it out of the oven, guys, it's not gonna look like it's 100% done, okay? So the middle is still gonna be a little shaky, kind of like Jell-O, but it definitely should harden up or stiffen up as it cools, okay? So let's pop this in here, 350 for about 30 to 35 minutes. All right, so it's about time to take this out of the oven. So let's go ahead and pull it out and let's see how we did. So guys, as I mentioned, it will be a little runny, but you do have to let it cool for a little bit. Pull this out, but I just want you guys to be able to see it, okay? So let's pull this back a little bit. So after letting it cool for a little bit, you're gonna be able to cut it pretty easily. You can see that, and this is why, guys, I mentioned in the beginning, you don't have to use parchment paper, but did you guys see how easy it was to take it out of the pan? It comes right off. If you guys choose not to use parchment paper, just be mindful that you're gonna have to spray down your pan really well because you don't want it to stick, and especially using, like creating a pecan pie filling, it does get really sticky and like ooey gooey. So just keep that in mind. You will have to definitely let it completely sit and cool in the pan if you do not use parchment paper, okay? So I'm gonna cut this open, guys, so you guys can see what it looks like. We did that espresso shortbread, right? So we did like a cookie recipe and we just flavored it with our triple strength espresso compound. As I mentioned before, if you don't care for coffee or you would rather do a different flavor, you can definitely do that. I know we have like butter pecan that would also do really well in this, just enhance the pecan flavor. So that's always an option. Maple. I was even thinking of sweet potato, to be 100% honest with you guys. I was going back and forth between the two and I was struggling so much with which one I thought was gonna be better. So they were both great though, so try it out. Sweet potato is another great option, right? So let's look at this. Look at that, you guys. So you can see the shortbread down here, the pecan topping up there. You can see the pecans inside. So this is what it'll look like. And what better way to eat pecan pie than on the go? So if you guys are like this and would like to see more content similar to this or need recipe ideas, make sure you follow us at Amoretti on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, any social media platform, you name it, we're there. Find us there for more great content.